Hi guys, welcome. This is what we're going to be painting today. Super, super pretty painting. So I'm going to give everyone 2 minutes to show up just to make sure we're not missing anyone. We don't start without anyone. And then we're going to start in exactly 2 minutes. So in the meantime, just make sure you have water, paper towel, brushes, paints, and so on. And then we'll start. All right, let me reorganize my space here a little bit as well. Clean canvas. And hopefully everyone has everything that we need, but I will tell you in a second what we're going to need as well. All right, I think it's time. So welcome guys, welcome everyone. If we haven't met before, my name is Vera. I'll be your instructor for today. And sometimes I know you can see my face in the videos, but today is just going to be my hands. And of course, the painting. So let's quickly go through all our supplies and make sure we have everything that we need. First thing you're going to need is, of course, a canvas. So make sure you have a white canvas. You can use absolutely any size. I'm using 16 by 12 inch. Yeah, but go bigger, go smaller, completely up to you. Doesn't have to be that exact size. Now, next thing we're gonna need is paint, of course. I'm gonna be using pretty standard set of primary colors. So blue, in my case, it's phthalo blue, yellow, black, white, and red. So in this particular case, it doesn't matter which red you use. Whichever red is fine. For blue, definitely better is either phthalo blue or primary blue. I would just avoid using ultramarine blue if you have that option. And if you have pre-mixed greens, you're welcome to use them. We are not using pre-mixed colors. We only use primary to show you guys how to, mix them, to learn mixing. So that's why I'm going to be using this set of colors. But again, if you have a good pre-mixed green, you're absolutely welcome to use it. You're going to need a paper towel, very important, or reusable fabric cloth. If you have that, that's okay too. That will also work. And of course, some water, very important, and brushes. I will be using 3 different brushes today. I'm going to be using this wonderful big brush for the background. I find that it's the fastest and the easiest brush to get our background out of the way for any size painting, really. Even if you go half of the size that I'm using or double the size that I'm using, this is still your best brush for the background. So the bigger, the better, really. For our details here, so for the waves here, for some of the branches, and for the flowers, I'm going to be using this one. So it's a pointy brush with a really nice pointy tip. As you can see, do you see? It's almost like needle-like tip of a brush. If your is not like that, that's okay. As long as it's a rounded brush with somewhat of a pointy tip, that's fine. In my case, it's number 10 for the size of my painting, but any medium-sized brush will work. If you only have square brush, nothing to worry about. It will also work just as fine. This is just my preference for this particular painting. And of course, something very important that you need to have is a small detailed brush. So small detailed brush, for this brush, it's actually important that the brush has a nice pointy tip, because there are some fine details here, such as branches, some little dots, some highlights. So all those pretty little things you want to do with the finest brush that you have. And those little crosses here that are like a reflection. So if you have a really good detailed brush, that would be awesome. Again, if not, you can still use whatever you have, but it's more ideal if you do. So that's pretty much it. Guys, feel free to ask questions in chat, because this is YouTube Live, so it gives us ability to communicate, which is great. So feel free to ask all the questions that you may have in chat, and I'll try to answer them to the best of my ability. Now, if you're first time painting with us, just to let you know from the beginning, because this is the question we get asked a lot, will video be available for you watch if you have to go? Absolutely. So if you have to go somewhere, or you feel like you like to take it at a slower pace, the video is available for rewatch. You can do it any day after today. Totally fine. It's going to stay right here on our YouTube channel. It's not going anywhere. And also, if you find that you prefer the ability to maybe rewatch certain section, even as we are live, YouTube does give you ability to actually scroll back and rewatch the segment that is already taped again and again and again, and as many times as you would like. So that's a good option to know up front. So that's pretty much it, guys. So what are we going to start with? We're going to start with a background. Let me tell you, and then I'll put this one aside and we'll focus on this one, because as you can see, when I put them two side by side, my camera auto focuses on white, so it makes it super, super dark. So I'm going to be needing to switch back and forth a little bit. So let's talk about a background on the colors that we're going to be using. We're actually going to be using just two colors. Well, three colors. We're going to be using green, dark green, something like that. We're going to be using white, and we're going to be using black. So we're going to start by making that dark green. So pretty much this color, whatever color you can see here, that's the color. Let me even get closer and see. Yeah, do you see this color? Now you can see it better. That's the color we're going to be using as a base. So we're going to make this wonderful dark green. It's really just beautiful, deep green color. Well, if you have it pre-mixed, great. I know it does. A lot of paint brands come with this particular color pre-mixed. So you're welcome to use that. If not, we'll mix it along, because I will be mixing mine. So we'll start with that. We'll mix this green. We'll cover all this bottom part. So I would say about bottom third, maybe even a little bit higher than that. Maybe almost half with this dark green. Then we're going to take black, and we're going to blend our dark green into the black here. Then we're going to go back to our dark green, and we're going to blend our black back into the dark green. And then for the very top, we're going to mix our dark green with a little bit of white, and we'll finish up with that lighter green. So dark green, smooth transition to black, smooth transition black into dark green, smooth transition into lighter green. And once we have that, we will also take some black, and I'll flick it from the sides here to darken up the sides of this dark green just a little bit. And you see it kind of creates the waves already. So that's pretty much what we're going to do. So let's start mixing. I will keep this here for now, so we have a color reference. All right, so I'm going to take my big brush here. I'll start with yellow. I'll just take some yellow, put it on the side, and then I'll take some blue. So this is my dark primary phthalo blue. And I'll mix them up, and this is just the right color. Do you see? It's dark, it's cold, it's green. That's exactly the color that you want. If your brush is actually, if your paint is actually giving you too dark of a color, you can always take a tiny, tiny touch of white, not a lot, and add it in just to reveal that color a little bit more. Because sometimes if your paint is like my paint is great and it's very pigmented and I love it. But the downside of this paint is it actually can be very dark if you don't add any white to it. So I had to add just the tiniest little smidge of white, like a very, very tiny, well, you saw what it was, like a tiny smidge on the corner of my brush to make it the right color. And make sure you have a lot of it because we're gonna be using it a lot. So it may be wise to mix up front what you're gonna need so you don't run out of it halfway through and then have to spend time to mix it again because your paint will dry and it's gonna be harder to blend. So if you can, make a pretty decent amount of this color right away. In my case, this is more than enough. Like you don't need a plate full, you don't need 100 grams of it, but just not a tiny touch, make enough. And then, what I'm gonna do, okay, let me put this one away. All right. What I'm gonna do now is, let's look at my canvas fully. Is I'm gonna go until about, I would say here. So do you see it's a bit less than half? Half would be somewhere around here. So it's a bit less than half, and I'm gonna color this entire thing with this paint, with horizontal brush strokes. And I'm gonna do it pretty thick. So I'm not using just a tiny touch of paint. I'm using a very generous amount of paint. And again, you don't have to blob it on in just 1 inch layer. That's not the goal. Why I'm saying it has to be a generous amount is because if you layer it too thin, A, you may see some white canvas through, which is what we don't want to have. And B, it will dry really fast. And that's a problem here because we need to have it wet for at least next, I would say 5 to 10 minutes. It doesn't have to be long. We don't need to have it wet for the next 45 minutes. We just have to have it wet for the next 5 to 10 minutes so we have enough time to blend it with our black. That's the only reason why I'm saying we have to have a good amount of this green there so it doesn't dry too fast. And then as soon as you have that green, and guys, you will notice the color will switch. Sometimes if I lift my camera up, again, it autofocuses on white, so it makes everything else dark, but I'll be zooming in to show you the proper color. Then you're gonna wash your brush right away. This all has to be done pretty fast because it's better to do it on wet. And then, so I'm taking generous amount of black now, and I'm going, do you see this is like something between 1/3 and half that we colored in here. So now I'm gonna color in this little strip that I would say about 1 inch, maybe 1.5 inches in the middle, complete black, maybe even 2 inches. So somewhere between 1 inch and 2 inches right in the middle, complete black. Yeah, 2 inches I think is better. And then I'm gonna blend it down. Do you see how right now this is a harsh line of separation? So that's why it's good to work with wet paint. So as soon as you have it, continue without refilling your brush, going down. And do you see what it creates? It creates a beautiful transition. So whenever your brush ran out of black paint on it, and now it's fully green because it picked up that wet green, you can start going up and doing the same thing. Just don't wash your brush and don't refill it with paint. Just go until your brush is dirty with black again, and then go down again until your brush is dirty with green, and so on. Just continue going back and forth. Sometimes, if you find that this is not working for you, you're gonna need to wash your brush, dry it off on a paper towel, and then do these exact same steps with a clean brush. Because sometimes if you have, let's say, too much paint on your brush, that it may feel like, oh, it's never ending. It just continues carrying through and through and through and through. So in that case, just wash off your brush and start at black with a clean, somewhat wet but not too wet brush. So it picks up some black and spreads it down, then it picks up some green and spreads it up, and so on. That's pretty much the goal here. And whenever you have that, we're gonna move on to blending our black into the green again. So again, Green, black, green with smooth transition, as I mentioned earlier, and all that has to be done on wet. So I wash my brush right away. I can't wait until my black is dry because it's going to make it very hard for me to blend. So I'm going to go right back to my green. I washed my brush. I'm going right back to my that dark green that I originally used for the bottom. And I'm going to cover, I would say, about half of this upper space with that green. And again, pretty generous. And then I'm going to blend it the same way into black. So I'm going to continue going down with green into black until my brush is completely black and contaminated with that color. And then I will continue going up without refilling or washing my brush. And so on, up and down, up and down. And notice I'm not going all the way down to the bottom of the black, and I'm not going all the way down to the bottom of the green, because otherwise all this is going to be transition. So there is not going to be pure green or pure black. So that's why I will go a little bit, I'll go a little bit, I'll go a little bit, I'll go a little bit. I'm not going all the way, because then again, I still want to have some pure black, it's not blended, and I want to have some pure green that's not blended. So that's why I'm not going all the way. And whenever you feel like you have a sufficient blending, you can move to next color, which is going to be last color in this pattern of blending. And that's going to be slightly lighter green. So just, if you still have a little bit of that dark green that we started with, you can add a little bit of white to it to make it lighter. And that would be your last one. And you're going to blend it into this. If not, make it again. If you don't get it right and it doesn't match as a perfect match to your first color, that's okay. Not the end of the world, not a problem. It is what it is. It doesn't affect this painting. This painting can survive it and it will still look wonderful. So it's not something to worry about here. It doesn't have to be a precise match. So I am making a whole new one because I ran out. And oh yeah, that's a good color. So do you see it's a couple shades lighter. It's not too light either. It's still, I'll say, medium kind of color. So it's not light green really. It is a medium green. I'll cover the top, and then I'm going to start blending it down into my dark green, and then up and down the same way that we did with black, until we create a transition that we love, and then we stop. And that is my blending. So that is my 3-color blending. So dark green, black, dark green, light green. And you can still see some streaks, and that's okay, especially for this particular painting, because this is going to be fully covered with our branches, and here we're actually going to create waves. So streaks work in our favor here. They don't work against us. They work with us, so it's all good. I'll give you guys some time. I'll probably give you 3 to 5 minutes to finish this, and then we're going to start adding black. I can't really give you more time than that, maybe 3 minutes even. Because again, adding black on the bottom is easier when it's wet, and then it can give you a little bit more time to catch up, because then we're not in rush at all. We have all the time in the world. If it dries, good. We're not in rush. What we were in rush for is doing this all on wet, so we have a perfect blending. Now that's done, we can wait a little bit. So I'll give you a couple minutes. Again, if you have any questions, ask away. Hi, Vicky. Hi, guys. Yeah, it's been a while since I did a YouTube live. And you guys may find if you're using a larger canvas, maybe you're using, let's say 16 by 20, it may take you a little longer, and that's okay. Usually the bigger your canvas is, the longer it takes you on average. So keep that in mind. And if you find that you're using maybe half of the size of my canvas, that you're actually ahead of me with this, or maybe, yeah, it's like super fast, and that's good too. All that is good. I would say continue blending. So to answer your question, if your brush had too much water and you started blending and the water kind of diluted your paint and now it's super streaky, if you can continue blending, and if you have enough water paint overall on your canvas, it will eventually even up. If you don't have enough paint on your canvas, though, you might need to actually take more paint and repeat the steps again. So if you're somewhere here, for example, you might need to take both of the colors again, lay them again, and do that again. And that's only if you feel like it's actually too diluted and there is no coming back because there's simply not enough pigment. But I know what you mean. Yeah, it's a tricky spot because you have to wash your brush and it has to still be somewhat wet. Otherwise it wouldn't blend. If it's fully dry, it will just soak in the moisture from the paint and it wouldn't blend. It will just not do the job. But if it's too wet, then it dilutes your paint too much and then it creates streaks. So I know what you mean. It happened to me many times before. But yeah, either to continue going blending and it will eventually even up, or add more paint of both colors and then continue blending. All right, guys, I'm gonna continue adding the black streaks to the bottom, and then I can give you a bit more time because, again, as I mentioned, this is the last thing we kind of have to do on somewhat wet. It doesn't have to be fully wet like before, but it's better than fully dry. And then the rest we don't have to do on wet at all. In fact, it's better if it dries. So I'm gonna use my medium pointy brush at this point. I'm gonna take some black. So I dipped my brush in the water to make it wet first, and then I dabbed it off on a paper towel so it's not too wet again. And then I'm gonna take a little bit of black, and again, I'm gonna dab it off lightly on a paper towel so it doesn't have too much black either. And I'm gonna start adding streaks from the side. So you're not gonna add them from the inside out, always from the outside in. And they can be either straight, they can be a little curved, either is fine. And whenever you need to, whenever you find that your brush is too dry, dip it in a water again, then dab it off on a paper towel so it's not too wet. And then grab a little bit of paint. I usually, as you notice, I rub my paint into my brush so it doesn't just sit like a blob on top. So it's like evenly spread into the bristles of the brush. And you see, so here, I went a little bit less. I didn't touch the middle as much. If you have a brush stroke or two going through the middle, totally fine, not a problem. But on the bottom, I intentionally went a little bit more, like all the way to darken up specifically the bottom a bit more. So I think this is pretty much it. I might even go a little bit higher up here on the sides. But yeah, this is pretty much it. So again, I'll give you guys a couple minutes to do that, and then we'll move on to making our branches. So now this was all that needed to be done on somewhat wet. Now the rest is actually better if it's done on dry. So we're really not in a rush anymore here. In fact, for us to move to our next step, which is going to be, so we're going to do the branches, but we also need to do some work right here. We're going to do two colors here. We're going to do yellow, light yellow, and we're going to do some white. So we'll have to wait for this to dry. So if you have a hair dryer nearby, that's always a great option. My paint generally dries pretty fast, so I would say in the next 5 minutes, all this is going to be dry, so it would be safe for me to continue. If your paint is just a slower drying acrylic, which is totally normal, nothing wrong with that. Different brands dry at different speed, and especially depending on how much of paint you applied, it may dry faster or slower. So if you find that you have paint that dries slower and you feel like, oh, now I'm falling behind, grab a hair dryer and just blow dry it. So yeah, so ideally we want this a bit on the drier side before we move further. Ideally fully dry actually, but half dry or almost dry will also work. That's not a deal breaker. And as we wait, another thing that you could do, so maybe you're not done yet, but if you are and you're just waiting for it to dry, there's one thing that you could do, and that is you could paint the sides. If you haven't done that yet, because I know a lot of the time people, and I myself, when I'm using not the table, but the easel usually, I would try to paint the sides as I go. So I would just color match everything and wrap it around the edge. So let's say I'm using dark green, I'll just wrap it around the edge. I'm using lighter green, I'll wrap it around the edge, and so on. I don't find it very comfortable doing that when I use table versus easel. So this time I'm going to be doing this now. Options if you want to do the edges. Option number one, you can color match. So again, you just make color used here. You take dark green and you wrap it, then black for the lines, again, extended onto this edge of canvas, then dark green, then lighter green. So that's one option. It's a little more complicated and will require a little more work because you have to mix all the colors again. Or easier option, you just take black and you color all the edges with black. I'm personally going to go with black. I'm not going to make it difficult for myself. I think black is perfectly compatible with every single color in here, and I think it will frame the painting nice. So I'm just going to take a medium square brush. I prefer square brushes for painting edges. I find that they generally give me a crisper edge, especially if I'm using such color as black, so contrast color. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that while we wait, because this has to dry anyway. But yes, if you would rather color match and have it more of a look of the image wrapped around the edge versus it being framed in black, then you can do that too. Whatever works for you guys. Or you can skip that. If you'd rather use your break, drying break for snacking and chatting, that's okay too. No pressure. You can always do edges very last thing. All right, almost done. Last little corner here. I'm done. All my edges are finished and it looks really nice. I love the look. I'm going to try to be really careful here not to put my fingers into it, but I love the look of painting looking like it's framed in black. Makes me happy. Hi. Hi. Yes, me too. Great color. Especially when, yeah, when my light doesn't reflect on it so bad. I find that the black and generally dark paintings are the worst for videos because they just reflect so much. Hi guys. All right. So when you guys have this, let me know. Give me a thumbs up. I can wait a couple more minutes and then we'll move to our bottom part here. In my case, it's fully dry and I might probably go wash my hands in between just because why not? And also, if you want to, feel free to change your water. I wouldn't probably insist on it just yet because we're going to use some lighter colors here. We're going to use some light yellow and some white here, but then we're going to move right back to black and we're going to do our branches in black. So after that, it's best for you to change the water. However, if you don't mind changing your water maybe 2 times instead of once, now is a good time to change it as well because we're going to be using lighter colors. So either is fine. Yep, totally. Oh, yay, thumbs up. Great. Yes, with mixing, it's tough. The more you practice, the better you get. Plus, also it depends on your pigment too, because we're all using different paint, right? So different paint mixes different. It could be not your fault at all if the color doesn't look right. It could be just your brand of paint that maybe is not capable of giving you that color. That happens. So we use, for those who are asking, we use starred acrylic. We buy it at Curry's in Canada because I know a lot of you guys are joining from all over the place. So that's what we use. You can use a similar, you don't have to use this brand. By the way, they don't pay us. It's just, that's a lot of, we often get that question asked and we use it because we love the quality and we love the price. It's really great for the price and it mixes super well. And as you notice, a lot of the things that we do is mixing. It's all about mixing. So this bit mixes well. But if it's not available in your area, just go to your art store and ask for student grade acrylic in like jars similar to this. All student grade acrylics in those 2-liter jars are usually made for mixing. They're not made to be used straight out of the bottle. And usually they are pretty good quality per price. So that's what I probably would do. And of course, rely on recommendations of your local store people. They know their product, they know what they have. So just feel free to ask away all the questions and let them know what you're using it for. Say, hey, I'm following these tutorials. They use a lot of mixing. What mix as well? I need phthalo blue. I need brighter or any red that's on a pinker side that doesn't have yellow pigment pre-mixed into it. I need bright yellow, I need black, and I need titanium white. What can you recommend? And ask them as well. Another thing, make sure they're not too translucent. They need to be somewhat opaque. So somewhat non-transparent. Ideally, because we had people who, we heard stories from people who went to the store and they bought really good brands of paint. Actually, I would say like mid/up by the price, not the lower price brands. A really good quality paint too. Nothing against those brands. It's just they bought the paint that they bought was the certain brands, the ones that are more expensive especially, have paint that is more opaque and more translucent. So you have to look out for that too. It may be two blacks or two reds or two whites side by side, and one may be more transparent, one may be less transparent. So you kind of have to look for that writing on a paint as well. Our paint is not like that. Our paint is more simple paint. It doesn't come in all those varieties of translucency, but yeah, something to look out for. All right, let me quickly wash my hands and I'll be back, guys. All right, look at those clean hands. Great. So now we're going to move. Let me show you our original here for a second so we know what we're doing. So we're going to move on to this bottom part right here. So we're going to start those waves. I'm still going to be using my medium pointy brush, so this one. I'm going to be using it in a similar way that we did with black. So I'm going to be dipping in the water, then dabbing off on a paper towel, then rubbing in some paint in it, and then lightly going over. So what you don't want is you don't want to take a blob of paint. You want to kind of dry brush some paint on. Yes, it should be visible, so you should have enough paint on it, so it's not like super light and almost wishy-washy. It should have a decent amount of paint on it. Just don't take a blob, because otherwise you're not going to have those beautiful soft lines. You're just going to have harsh lines that look very blobby, and we don't want that. So that's what you want to avoid. So we'll start with our yellow mixed with white, and then we'll move on to our straight white. So I'm going to dip my brush in the water, dab it off on a paper towel. I'm going to take some white. This looks like a safe spot. Let's try it. We'll take some yellow mixed with white. Now I'm going to dab off my brush just a touch on a paper towel as well to make sure I don't have like a blob of paint. And then I'm going to start adding very soft, wavy lines here. I'm going to stand up for this. It's easier to do the standing. At least I find for me when I'm working over the table versus over the canvas. See, super soft. And even now, I'm trying to start the brushstroke from the middle. Notice I'm not starting from the side to side. I'm starting from the middle to the side, then to the middle to the side. So this is what I'm doing, because wherever you start, That's going to be the thickest point. That's going to be the most visible point. And for you to have those light, almost blending into the distance edges, they have to be the last brush stroke. They have to be that end flick. They cannot be the beginning. All right, so I think this is enough for me. I'm happy with this amount. I think this looks really great. Now, another little thing I'm going to do, I'm actually not even going to refill my brush for this until I'm completely out of paint, is that I'm going to add a couple vertical lines. So this is where it gets a little tricky. So I need you guys to look here for a second. So I'm going to use my brush flat. So I'm not using it like that. I'm going to use it more flat so I can get larger brush strokes. And that's for pointy brush people. If your brush is square, you can use it however you want. And I'm going to start at existing line. And I'll just add a couple lines down. So do you see I'm starting at existing line and I'm just dragging it down very lightly. And you're going to do it in a couple spots. You don't have to do it on every single line everywhere. Just choose a few spots. This is enough for me. I'm not going to be doing it anymore. I'm happy with it. Oh, Vicky, thanks for asking. I had not too bad summer, actually pretty busy. You know, just house projects, renovations, things like that. But yes, thank you. Did you have a good summer? Did you do anything fun? Who did what? Tell us all about it. Let me live fun things through you guys. Tell me what fun things you did this summer. I didn't really get to do anything much fun, to be honest, but I'm okay with it. I have no problem with it. And once we have this, we're going to move to white. So I'm going to do the exact same thing with white, except I'm not going to be doing those vertical thingies, only the horizontal ones. So I'm going to use the same brush. Again, I'll dip it in the water. I'll dab it off on a paper towel. I'll take a little bit of white, but do you see right now it's like a blob on the end of a brush? So then I'm going to dab it into the brush to make sure it's really merged into my brush. So it's not just blob on the end. Now, do you see it's like really merged into the entire brush? It's like in the bristles, which is exactly what you want here. And now I'm going to start again, going over. Yeah, I'm going to stand up for this again. Not comfy sitting. And lightly. And I'm going to add it right over my yellow. And I will do a little bit less of it than I did of yellow, just so I can see yellow as well. So it doesn't cover all my yellow, so I can see both of my colors. So I can see some white and I can see some yellow. Beautiful. Oh no, sorry to hear that your verticals are way off. Well, you can always fix that. This is a very fixable painting in a way that if let's say you overdid it with verticals and they just seem like too much, way too much, that's fine. Just make that green again and add those green lines from the ends, and that will cover up, that will get rid of some of them. You don't have to get rid of all of them, but it will help. And you can take some black again and bring it from the ends. Like if you overdid it with either one of those colors, with either the yellow or you overdid it with white, that's super easy fix here. Just either green or black or both from the ends. That'll fix it for you. All right, to answer more of your questions, guys. So Rosario, this is being recorded, so you can watch it anytime. So if you missed it, you can just go back whenever it's convenient for you and you can do it. Or even now, you can just start from the beginning. Just scroll to the beginning of this video and start from the beginning. Totally fine. And for those who are asking which state I live, I actually live in Canada, in the Great Toronto area. So just a suburb of Toronto. All right, and after this, we're gonna start adding this really pretty, like reflection lights. Now, it's very important to not overdo it with them. So let me show you how we're gonna do it. I'm gonna switch to my small brush for this, and I'm gonna water down my paint a little. So I dipped my brush in the water. Now I'm gonna water down my paint to make it nice and liquid. The consistency matters here. If before we needed to use somewhat drier brush, right? So it's not too blobby, just a bit of paint. Here, you kind of want to use more of a liquid paint because we're going to do details, but also not too much. Don't put too much in your brush. And let me show you how we're going to do it. You're going to start by putting a couple dots, and then you're going to take a finger and you're going to smudge them to create like a bowl of like a fogginess. And then from the fogginess, you're going to put 4 lines, one in different direction, but all lines are going to start from that dot. So up, up, down, down. And not all of those lines have to be the same length. Some of them bigger, some of them shorter, totally fine. And we can add quite a few of those. And again, I would encourage you not to make them too bright in your face, kind of white. So that's why we're watering down as well, because watering down your white makes it a little more transparent, which makes it not so super white, because we want it to match our waves here. So if your waves are super, super white, then it's fine. In my case, and then on the original painting, those lines are, as you can see, they're not super white. They're white, visibly white, but they could be much whiter if we used more of just a lot of paint and made them blobbier. So that's why you kind of want to match them in a way. So they look like they're from the same story. So they don't look like they're from, a different story. So we're gonna add a few of those, anywhere you want. And make some bigger, make some smaller. They don't have to all be the same size. In fact, it's much better if you have a variety, and some bigger, some smaller. right, I think this is more than enough for me. I don't think well, maybe one more. One more. Never mind, guys. One more. All right, I'm happy with this. No more. So I'll give you another minute to do this, and then we're going to move to our branches. I will start working on those, guys. You're very welcome. Thanks for joining. Vicky, yes. That's pretty good. A lot of painting and learning techniques. That sounds awesome. Sounds like my kind of fun. Can you guys see the video well? Because it looks focused on my end. Hi, Judy. Yes, sounds good. Reading is joy. Should have known it was you. Should have known. All right, guys, are we ready to move to our branches? So let me show you branches on our original here. There are lots and lots of them. So they start from this corner and they go all the way up. Sorry, all the way down. So there are three main branches. This one, and this one. And there are lots of tiny ones that come out from them and all go down. Now, some of them are longer and some of them are just like a short flicks. Now, what's important about branches in general is that they are thicker where they start from. So in this case, right here, and they gradually get thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner as they go down. So that's, I would say, the main thing to look out for. Now, another thing that you really want to try to accomplish here is to have a really pointy end to every single small branch. To every one of those main branches, including those tiny ones on the sides, you want to have a really nice pointy tip. And the way you accomplish that is you start every single branch from the main branch out. So you never ever start a branch from the outside and bring it in, always from the inside and bring it out. And that will give you a nice end flick to every single branch. So, okay, so let's start with one. We'll start with the middle one. What I usually do also, I don't go, let's say, one branch and then small branches, and then second branch, small branches, and then third branch, small branches. I'll put all three of my main branches first, and I will do small branches. So that's what I'm going to do. You can either just follow along and do it right away, or you can watch me do this first and do it later. Either is fine, whatever works for you guys. Now, as far as brushes, what brushes we're going to use? This is where this brush comes very handy, because as you can see, it has a wider base, right? It's a number 10. So it has a nice white base that if you push on it hard enough, it can give you probably maybe not this thickness, but this thickness. So for the ends, you still will need to do a couple brush strokes to achieve that thickness. But also as you go further, because it has a nice pointy tip, it can give you those really, really fine lines as well. So that's a benefit of this brush. If you don't have brush with the super pointy tip, you're gonna need to use two different brushes. You're gonna need to use something more like a medium brush, and you're gonna need to use an additional small brush. Oops, an additional small brush, because you still need to have those pointy ends. And if you can't achieve both the width, the thicker width here and a thinner end with one brush, then you're just gonna need to use two. You're gonna do this brush as long as you can, and whenever you can't, you're gonna continue with a small brush. And then you just transition them properly. So either is fine. You'll figure it out as you go, what is more comfortable, what is less comfortable. I'm gonna try to do most of it with this brush, because again, I can. This brush allows me to do that. But if you cannot, this is your brush. This is your helpful brush. But also you can always do, let's say, middle branch with more medium brush, and then smaller branches with just small brush, which is probably what I'm gonna do. Okay, let's just try it and see how it goes, right? So let me put this one aside for now. And again, I'm gonna wet my brush, so I'll dip it in the water. Then I'm gonna take some black. So in this case, you do wanna water down your paint as well. Pretty much the same that we did for our smaller stars right here. And the reason why is, we're not trying to make it more transparent. That's not the goal. We just want it more liquid. If your brush, if you have the best brush in the world, it's a great brush and it costed you $1 million, but your paint is too thick, you're not going to achieve the right effect. So it's not only about your brush, it also is a lot about the consistency of your paint. So you have to have the right consistency of paint. So, and the right consistency of paint is quite liquid for this step. So that's why I'm going to water down my paint so it's nice enough for me to get thick lines, but also thin lines. And I'm going to start right here, and I'm going to push on my brush a little harder. And you see, when I push on it a little harder, it gives me a wider brush strokes. And then I'm just going to do a somewhat of a wavy line. And notice as I go further, I'm pushing on my brush less and less as I go. And that's what gives me the variety of widths. That's what gives me a finer line. And you see, I'm brought it pretty far, and it's not even. Yes, there's still the gradient of thicker to thinner, but it's not even. And you're not going to get it right from the one brush stroke. That's just not an expectation you should have. It's good to get a good base, a good start with one brush stroke, but really that's not the goal. So I'm just going to go over it and perfect it now. And I'll make it more of a proper transition of the width of the branch. So do you see now it nice and gradually gets from thicker to thinner. So that's my one branch. I'm going to do my second one. Again, do you see from thicker to thinner? And last one, we'll bring it somewhere right here. So last one, I think I'm going to end somewhere right here, right on this path. So not too far. I'm not going to be bringing it down, but I do want it to hit this path just a little bit. All right. I'm happy with my main branches. Now I'm going to start my smaller branches. And again, you can continue using the same brush or you can use smaller one. I'm going to go with smaller one probably. So always start your branch from the existing branch and bring it out. And again, curved, always curved. Don't do straight branches. So if you're going to do straight branches, it's going to start looking like a cactus or like someone came and broke off every single branch. So it's going to look like just the stubs of branches, what was supposed to be branch, but it's broken. So that's why we need that nice and long one. Again, make sure your paint is liquid enough, because if it's not, you're going to have a very hard time making fine line. So do you see I added a couple of longer branches? Maybe one more longer one. And even they are thicker where they start, thinner in the end. And now I'm going to get a couple of just flicks. So let's add just a flick here. You see, it's just a nice curved flick. And I would say another thing about branches, don't overdo it with the branches. Less is more. Now I'm going to move on to my second one. Sophia, to answer your question, I use number 2 to make the stars, but 0 is even better. I just don't know where my 0 is. It's somewhere, I have it, but I don't know where it is. But really, as long as your brush has the pointy tip, for stars or for branches, doesn't matter the number, as long as it has this pointy tip and ability to give you fine lines. That's mostly what matters here. But yeah, if you do have all your brushes numbered, and let's say you have a nice large set of brushes and you can choose any size, then 0 or 2 are the most ideal. Yeah, I think this is good. Let's move on to the last one and then we'll reevaluate. That's good. I don't want to be adding many more. Maybe I will extend a couple of them. But this is a really good amount of branches. I don't want to overdo it because, you know, once you put it, you can't take it back. It has to stay. So it's always good to start with less because you can always add more if you need to, but you can take it back. So it's a good amount for me. I don't want to be adding more. I'm happy with this. I can give you guys a couple more minutes because they actually need to dry up before we can move any further. We need them maybe not fully dry, but almost fully dry. Fully dry is actually more ideal. So another thing I want you guys to do right away is just look at your painting, maybe like on an angle, and you see whenever you see blobs of paint, like they're really visible right here, just take a clean dry brush and scoop them up because those blobs of paint are going to be drying forever. And also, you may potentially miss them. Your painting may look like it's fully dry, and then you may have like a blob or two that are not dry because, you know, there's more paint there. And then you start painting, you accidentally hit them, and they ruin it. So it's always good to get rid of them right away. So just look over it on an angle and see where we have blobs. Just kind of pick them up and scoop them off. And I'll give you a couple minutes to do that. For those of you guys who are just joining us now and you're wondering if it will be available later, it will be, but also if you set on doing it right now, you can just rewind and start from the beginning. Even now, it is available to start from the beginning, but also any other day is fine too. So whenever you have it and whenever you got rid of all the blobs, if you have a hair dryer, great, use it. It will speed up drying time. You can literally dry it with a hair dryer in probably 2 to 3 minutes to fully dry. In my case, I'll just let it air dry. My paint dries fast and I didn't use too much of it, so it shouldn't be more than, let's say, 5 minutes to full dryness, to fully dry. And that's with the condition that I get rid of all those blobs, of course. All right. And another thing, guys, and now is a perfect time for you to change your water. And I would highly recommend that because we're not going to be using black again. All we're going to be using is a really bright and vibrant color. So we're going to be using this yellowy, orangey color. We're going to be using straight orange. We're going to be using white. So those pretty much are 3 colors that we're going to be using going forward. So now, whenever you're done doing your branches, is a perfect time for you to change water, which is pretty much right now for me. So that's what I'm gonna go do, and I'll come back. All right, I am back with my clean water. And my painting is not fully dry yet, but it's definitely getting there. Another thing too, guys, if you don't have hair dryer nearby, or you prefer not to use it, what you could do, you can just do this. That's what we used to do in in-person events when we didn't have access to hair dryers. And it works actually really well. You'll be surprised how well it works. I mean, the bigger the range of motion, the better it's gonna work. So I wouldn't be doing it in front of camera here because it's gonna hit my camera, but really, like, this is a great way to dry it fast as well. Super simple manual way of drying painting fast. So feel free to help your painting a little bit if needed. Yeah, that helped it a lot actually. It's almost dry. But again, I'll give you a couple more minutes. I know it takes time. All right, so mine is actually fully dry, except I have one little blob of black right here, which A, is going to be dry very soon. B, I'm not planning to put anything here anyway, so it doesn't affect me. But yes, before you move on to painting flowers, always check it on an angle to make sure you don't have those blobs, because they will ruin it if you accidentally hit it. So now we can move on to flowers, or at least I can move on to flowers. And guys, I will encourage you, wait until it's dry for you. Don't rush ahead. So there are two ways you can do it. I'm going to show you a way to do it with a medium pointy brush, and I'll show you a way to do it with, let's say, a medium small square brush. Just because we're using different brushes, so it's good to know. The flowers, let me show you them on original as well. So you can see there are some 4 leaf flowers, there are 3 leaf flowers, there are 5 leaf flowers, and they're just singular. Ton of singulars, but lots of 3, 4, and 5s as well. And it's completely up to you how many of each. There's no set amount that you have to have. Let's say 5 petal flowers, 6 of 4. It's not a thing here. Just place them wherever you want, however you think is appropriate. The only thing, keep in mind, notice how the singular ones are always closer to the ends. So yeah, there are some singular ones in between here too. So you start by spreading the larger ones first. I would say somewhat evenly, except don't add them at the very ends. And then you fill up with the smaller ones. And I like adding those on the end. And the original painting had them on the end as well. So now the color. What I will be using, it's like a mix. It's light yellow, but also it's quite bright. So it is a mixture of white and yellow, but I will also be adding a little bit of red to it, just the tiniest little amount, only because my yellow doesn't have that warmth to it. It's a nice yellow, it's straight yellow, but it doesn't have that hint of warmth, and that's what I really want here. I want that hint of warmth, but don't overdo it, because if you overdo it, it's going to turn into orange, and that's not the color we're looking for here. We're looking for that yellow. We just want it a little warmer versus the colder neon yellow. I'm actually going to get a bit more yellow because mine looks to be all contaminated with a blue and a green. All right. I'll add a tiny touch of red as well. So notice how little bit of red I'm adding, like a little dot. Even this may be a little too much, but let's see. No, that's perfect actually. So just a tiny touch for the warmth. And so what I prefer to do is I like to just flick them from the outside in. So let me show you a 5-piece right here. So do you see I flick it from outside in, and then I rotate my brush on an angle, and I continue flicking them from the outside in. So always from the outside in. Flick, 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 flick with a rotating brush, right? Good question. What kind of trees are those supposed to be? I remember someone said in comment that it looks like candy corn trees. So I'm going to call them a candy corn trees because that's what they look like. I'm sure that's not a thing, but it's funny. So this is 5-piece. That's how I like doing it. Here is 3-piece. For example, let's put it somewhere here. So the same. Flick, flick, flick. Rotate your brush and do flicks from the outside in. 4-piece, let's put 4-piece somewhere. Let's put it here. So flick, 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 flick. Same thing. Now, if you try this, for example, once, you can even try this on a separate piece of paper first versus going straight on a canvas and see how it looks. And if you don't like it, I know some people may not get the shape of the petal right, because A, you need the right brush for it. B, it kind of comes with a lot of experience as well of how much to push, when to lift your brush, and so on. So you might find it more helpful. Let me get closer here as well. I don't know why it gets so white. All right, we're not gonna get closer. Never mind, guys. So you might find it more comfortable to actually outline them and fill them versus doing flicks. I like flicks more, but there is another way too. You can just do this. You know, you outline, you paint the three, and then you color them in. Right? So that's a way too. It doesn't have to be specifically flicks. Whatever works for you. Let's put a 4-piece here. So like if you want to do that, that's fine. You might need to maybe use medium brush for this then, because large brush is just hard to handle. And it's not going to give you maybe that good of a line. So medium or small brush is better if you want to do outline and then fill it in. But I'm going to continue going with this, again, number 10 brush, which is medium. Oh, sorry, guys. Let me show you in the square version. So I'm going to use square number 8. So square is actually, it's cool how you can do it with square. You kind of twist your brush. So I'm going to get closer for this. My contrast is going to be off, but bear with me. It's about technique, not about the color here. So you twist your brush. Do you see it creates like a circle? So again, just like a twist. Here are your 3 petal ones. And for the 1 petal ones, it's the same. If you're doing it as an outline, great, do that. If not, I'm just going to be doing them as a flick. So let me show you. From the outside in. And some of them are going to be bigger, some of them are going to be smaller. And now I'm just going to turn all my 3 pieces into the same style, because they all look different right now, because I showed you 3 different style, guys. So I'm going to even them up and turn them into one style, and I'm going to continue adding them until everything is filled, and then we can move to our next color. And again, I usually start with the bigger ones. Don't make them too big though. That's another thing to look out for. Make sure they're not too ginormous overall. Size can be a tricky thing to get right. All right, so I did quite a few of 3, 4, and 5 pieces. Now I'm just going to fill in the rest with onesies. So it's just single ones. Notice I'm always flicking them from outside in towards the branch. And here you can use smaller brush for them. If you don't want them so big, that's fine. They don't have to be massive. right, so I'm happy with this amount. I think this is good. I don't think it needs more. In fact, I think maybe if I add more, it's gonna ruin it. So I don't want to overdo it. I'm gonna stop. And I'll give you guys a second to do this, and then we'll move to our next two colors, which is gonna be orange and yellow. And make sure you wash your brushes in between so they don't dry with paint on them, because that will ruin your brushes. All right, guys, actually, I'm gonna continue, but feel free to pause whenever you need to. Again, the video is not going anywhere. I can give you 2 minutes if you want. Yeah, that's no problem. Thanks for asking. I actually find it helpful when you guys tell me if you need a bit more time. That's totally fine. Yep, no problem. I'll give you a couple minutes. All right, guys. Hopefully you have a little bit more flowers on your painting now than you had a couple of minutes before. So I'm going to show you next steps, but again, only move to them whenever you're ready. It's no rush at all. So what we're going to do is we're going to start adding the middles. Super simple. I'm just going to dab them on. For the smaller flowers though, for the little singular ones, I'm going to flick them. And again, you can use either the same brush for all, or you can use, let's say, medium brush for the bigger ones and a small brush for the smaller ones. That's totally fine. So let's mix our color. It's the same ingredients. So I'm going to start by mixing yellow and white to create the base. And then I'm going to add red. So this time I'm looking for a very saturated orange. So I'm going to use different proportions. I'm going to be using way more yellow, way more red, and way less white. So you still have to add some white because, I mean, you don't have to, but I have to add some white because my paint is semi-transparent. So if I don't add white, it's a little too transparent for my liking. So I have to add a little bit of white into it. But other than that, all good. So, and again, I'm going to dab it up a little bit on a paper towel because that was like a massive blob on my brush after mixing the paint, and I don't want to be blobby. So now I'm going to start with the 4s and 5s, so everything that has 4 and 5, or 3 that are positioned like, you know, like that versus like that. I'm going to start with them, and I'm just going to dab the middle. So just dab some orange right in the middle. And of course, refill your brush when needed. So those are done. Now for the 3s that are positioned like that, I'm going to flick it. So from that end towards the flower, you can still dab it, it's fine. You're just going to need to be more careful with how you dab it. So either flick it or dab it, either is totally fine. It will give you pretty much the same look as well. Like it shouldn't be much different. All right, so those are done as well. Now we're going to move to singular ones, and for the singular ones, I'm going to flick it from the bottom up, so like that, on every single one. And if you find the same brush is still comfortable for you, great. Go ahead with that brush. If you find that no, it's giving me too big of a lines, and they're just too dominant and too blobby, and they're ruining the look, switch to a smaller brush. All right, here they all are. That looks really good. And then, of course, I'll wash up my brush. I'll put it aside. And I'm going to switch to my last brush, which is going to be the small brush. And my last color, which is going to be white. So with this color, we're going to do 3 things. We're going to do a little highlight on the tip of every flower, which is what we're going to do first. Then we're going to do a little highlight on every branch, which is what we're going to do second. And last, we're going to add a couple dots in between to have this like magic fairy kind of look. It really does make a difference. Can't explain it, but it does. So first, you're going to, again, dip your brush in the water, take some white, and you can take a blob of white. It's not a big deal here. Actually, I'm going to take a bit more white. I'm running low here, and it's drying fast. So let me get a little bit more. Alrighty. So blob is fine for this. I'm going to take quite a blob, like not a massive blob, but a generous amount of paint. And I'm just going to take a little, I'm going to add a little flick on the end of every single one of my flower petals. Right at the end of flower petal. And you see I'm curving it according to the shape of the flower. And I'm using just the very tip of my brush too, because I don't want that to be too thick. So if blob of paint makes it too thick for you, then water it down or take less, because you don't want it to be too thick. You want it to be just a nice highlight on the end. And we're going to do that on the end of every single flower petal. You see, it makes them really pop. All right, I'll give you guys a couple more minutes to do this, and then we're going to move to our final two steps, which is highlights in the branches, because as you noticed, some branches just get lost because they're black on black, right? You can't see them. So we're going to highlight them so they're more visible, and we're going to add a couple of those little dots, which do make a huge difference somehow. It's unexplainable, but they do. So I'll give you another minute maybe to do this, and then we'll move to our next step. And in the meantime, if guys, this is your first painting with us, glad you joined. Feel free to check out our channel, subscribe if you like it. If not, that's okay too. We have lots of tutorials here for any subjects imaginable. We have seasonal, we have watercolor, we have drawing tutorials, we have just landscape. Honestly, anything you can think of, we have lots, and we usually add 1 to 2 every week. So we go live about once to twice every single week. So there's always something new that is coming. Yeah, so feel free to take a look. If this is your first time and you just stumbled across us while browsing here on YouTube, All right, let's add highlights. So for highlights, I'm going to be using, again, smallest brush that I have right now, which is number 2. I'm going to water down my white because you need to have really fine lines. And again, your paint has to be liquid enough. My paint, generally this paint is pretty thick as it comes out of a bottle. It's not too liquid. So for the super fine lines, I prefer to water it down. And then I'm going to take just a tiny touch of it on my brush, so it's not too much as well. And I'm going to start adding a tiny little highlight on one side only of every branch. So these lines, you want to keep them as fine as you can. That's the big thing for them. They have to be fine. So as fine as you can. All right, so that's our highlight. And you see now they're way more visible, those branches. They actually look more connected from top to bottom versus before when they were getting lost somewhere in this section. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a couple tiny little dots. So those are supposed to be really, really small, so make sure they're not too big. And I'm going to use just the tip of my brush. So again, I'm using the smallest brush that I have. And some of them you can make a little bit bigger, some a little bit smaller. So to make them a little bit bigger, you just push a little bit harder on your brush. And to make them a touch smaller, you push a little less. We'll just add a few of those. Again, don't overdo it and keep them overall small. Start with just a few, and if you feel like you can add more, then you should add more. But again, less is more. Don't try to fill everything with them right away. It's good to add a few and then see if it needs more. And if it does need more, you can always add more. Do you see I'm focusing in between here? But I did add a couple on this end, a couple here, and I'll add a couple underneath, but not all the way. I'm not filling the entire background. And that is enough for me. So again, notice they're mostly surrounding like this branch section, in between and a little bit around, but I'm not filling every corner with them. And after that, last thing, guys, you can just go ahead and sign it because that's pretty much it. That was our last step. And this is our beautiful finished painting. Now, guys, if you want to share your painting with us, please do. We love seeing your results. That's like favorite thing we always look forward to. And how you can do it, you can post it here. So here's the link to this event on Facebook that we created. We'll make a post right after we're done. And you're welcome to comment under that post and post your results there. That way we keep all the results in one place so everyone else who participated in this event and will participate going forward, because again, this video is going to stay here forever, can go back, can go to that page and see how everyone else has turned out. Just because it's fun. It makes us feel like we're actually doing this together in the same room, even though we're all over the world and it's middle of pandemic. So feel free to do that. Here's a Facebook link. I just posted it. Let me just double check if it works. Yep, it does. So it brings you right to this painting. We'll make a post about it in a second, and you can comment to that post with results. Now again, feel free to subscribe to our channel if you like this tutorial. We go live, I would say, about once or twice a week here, and it's always something different. Sometimes it's acrylic, sometimes it's watercolor, sometimes it's drawing. We have a variety of mediums, but also you always know what's coming in advance because we post those events, we create those events here on YouTube channel at least a month in advance. So if you look at it on the bottom, you should be able to see everything that's coming up live. So you can always do that too. We also do Zoom events. So if you guys more into format where you can verbally ask questions and show your progress paintings in like real time with instructor in a smaller group, then maybe Zoom is for you. And if that is for you, I'll send you a link how to access that. All right, here's a link to our website where you can find all our upcoming Zoom events. And again, we have a variety of mediums, ton of different events. We have something pretty much every day. And if you guys had fun and you want to say thank you by tipping me, you're welcome to do that. No pressure at all. You don't have to. We do this for the fun of it, but we'll never say no to tips as well. I did enjoy painting with you. This was a great 1 hour, 46 minutes, which I loved personally. Really enjoyed it. All right, so oh, thanks for asking. Yeah, I just posted the tip link here. It says, if you would like to support us, you can tip Vera, which is my name. My name is Vera, through PayPal using that link. So just click on that link. It will bring you to PayPal. And PayPal is a great option because it allows you to use, it's a secure service and you can use debit, credit, whatever you would like. Yeah. So again, optional, guys, no obligation at all. Now, to answer your question, are you allowed to sign it with your own name? Absolutely. This is your masterpiece. You made it, so sign it with your name, 100%. And also, if you guys want to sell it, go for it. If it turned out really well and you have someone who's willing to buy it, totally fine with us if you want to sell it. The only thing we ask that you give us credit, and you mentioned that you have painted it from the tutorial, but also we don't limit you to selling your piece because, you made it. It's your handiwork. Alrighty, guys. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Happy to answer anything for you, whatever I can. And also, if let's say you think of something that you want to ask later on and you're like, oh, I wonder this or I wonder that, you can always message us on Facebook. We're pretty responsive whenever we can. So, sometimes it gets really busy, so it may not be an immediate response, but it definitely will be a response within a 24 hours. So feel free to message us there too. And actually, I'll send you a link to Facebook just in case you guys don't have that, because that's the best way to communicate with us. If you have questions in regard to tickets, feel free to email us. But if it's more in regard to tutorial techniques, we prefer Facebook communication. And you can post your own comments too, even after the video is done. It's just we don't check comments very often. So we will respond to it when we see it, which may be a week after you post it. If you want more of a 24-hour kind of response, Facebook is a better way to go. So here you go. I send you a link to Facebook just so you know how to find it, so you don't have to type name and look through anything. Just click on link, it will bring you right there. All right, guys, thanks for joining me. I hope I'll see some of your results. I'm really looking forward to that, and enjoy the rest of your night. Bye, everyone.